Hello, hello.
Hello, dear
Hello.
participants. Hi. It's 4 o'clock Monday. Welcome to the Expertise Weekly webinar. Today, we have a very, very interesting topic. And because usually we are covering these very boring legal compliance topics. But today we have in our midst the very knowledgeable and seasoned, and most of all, very lovely Angie Weinberger with a very thought-provoking topic. How can we as global mobility professionals help fill the career gap? But before we turn over to Angie, I want to ask your attention for two requests. First of all, please don't forget that this year we have another version of the master course at the Erasmus University HR and Global Mobility. So registration is open. So if you're interested, also only for information, please reach out to us and we will help you with information and how to register. Second request is during the presentation, Angie will have short breaks for you to, if you have questions or remarks, but only during those breaks, please use your microphones. Further, during the presentation of Angie, please keep your microphones closed so we won't get interference from background noises. And so wait until Angie invites you for questions and remarks. So that's it from my side. Okay, over to Angie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Filling the Career Gap through Global Mobility Coaching. I just peeked at some names, and I think most of you are already familiar with me, but maybe you don't know the secret origin of my name yet. Maybe you thought because I'm German that I was named after Angela Merkel, but that is actually a myth. She and I are not that far apart in age. Now, I was named after this lady, Angela Yvonne Davis. And if you don't know her, she was an African-American freedom fighter in the 70s, went to jail. She was also a member of the Black Panthers. And then she became a professor at UCLA for women and minority rights and a lot of topics related to interculturalism and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I feel very honored that I was named after this lady. And honestly, when I don't blow dry my hair, it looks a little bit curlier than this as well. My mom has similar hair to her, but I unfortunately don't have the beautiful hair that she has. And then you also see a funny picture of me outside. So I like to be outdoors, hiking, skiing. Yeah, I like to be outside. You name it, gardening, if I can. I live in the beautiful country of Switzerland. And when there's no winter, and we have a long winter, then I like to be outside. And the last one is that is for all my friends in India and Pakistan and anywhere else in the world where you like spicy food. I actually also like my food extra spicy, and I can handle it if it's spicy. So if I ever come to your corner or we meet at an airport, the best way to make me happy is by providing spicy food to me. And in my local doner shop, they don't call me Angie, they call me Mrs. Extra Spicy. So that is all I can share as fun facts, because everything else you already know from the internet, or you can read about me on LinkedIn. I want to cover 5 topics, 5 areas today. And you will see there's a lot of 5s today. It's a day of 5. So first of all, the 5 reasons for this talk. Then the expert experience model, which funnily has 5 elements. And then 5 focus areas, suggestion for a new role the global mobility coach and how we can bring in global mobility coaching into our process. And then I want to talk a bit more about my company, Global People Transitions, and our digital global mobility coaching and what we offer and how we do that as well. So what are 5 reasons for today's workshop? First of all, we actually have talent shortages already. Then the backlash of against inclusion and DEIB initiatives. The third reason, the changes in our population towards lifestyle expats. 4, the loneliness epidemic. And 5, the world in polarity. Talent shortages, what is that? So first of all, you probably noticed, I mean, we've been talking about the war for talent for probably 20 years. But now what we see is that Gen AI replaces junior work, and manual work is suddenly a lot more valuable than highly skilled work in many markets. And I put a little asterisk there because, yes, some of this manual work, for example, taking care of elderly citizens, will probably at some stage also be replaced by robots. But right now, in many countries in Europe and Switzerland, we experience the talent shortage, especially in those areas, like, for example, in elderly care, in the hospitals, in manual work, like my uncle is a carpenter, for example. He has a hard time finding staff. And then on the other hand, when you look at the job markets, for example, here in Zurich, we have an oversupply of highly qualified candidates. So there's a mismatch between the supply and the demand on the job market. Highly qualified candidates who cannot find a job. And then when you look at job profiles, you notice they're often written for the Avengers. Yeah, so you have to be Captain America to be able to fulfill a job nowadays. You probably saw that most of the jobs that you read nowadays, they're either written for 4 people at once. The expectations on jobs are highly unrealistic. And then we have the famous applicant torture systems. So our HR systems, for some reason, have not really kept up with the technology and the development in technology in general. And many applicants, if you're looking for a job, you will probably know how it feels. They really feel like they're tortured by the system. Yeah? So they filtered out early, they get a robotic reply. So talent shortage is there, but it's also really hard to find a job. So that is a bit of a dilemma at the moment. And then we have silos in HR, a lack of collaboration. So sometimes recruiting doesn't really know what global mobility does. Global mobility is not involved in talent management. And if we all worked together better, if there was more glue, things would probably be a bit easier for our internal candidates as well. And then also in the European market, what I noticed, there's often unrealistic expectations about language proficiency. Even if the roles could be performed in English, there's an expectation that, for example, you speak German at a C1 level or French at a C1 level, even though the role could be in English. So there's a lot of issues around the topic of recruiting and how we fill positions. And then the second one is the backlash against inclusion and DEIB initiatives. Now, this is not new because culture change driven by affirmative action will always result in resistance and backlash. Yeah, so generally humans oppose change. However, there's a current agenda against DEIB initiatives, and that has been driven by this idea that wokeism, it's almost a bad word, has led to unnecessary slowdown in economic growth. So the story is when people, they want to have rights for everybody and they work in affirmative action, that they slow down the economy. And this is why Some of our colleagues have now been made redundant in many countries in the world. I think HR cannot really drive change. HR, or the people and culture function, doesn't matter how you call it, to be honest, can only support the process and ensure fairness for all. But senior management needs to be behind culture change. So if senior leaders role model inclusion, it will have a ripple effect throughout the organization. So I think we always need to start with the senior leaders in the organization if we want to change anything. And then we also have to understand every country has different challenges when it comes to inclusion. Some are only to be understood in the historical context of the country, in the legal context of the country, and cannot be applied universally. Then we have a division of powers, and the division of powers between the legal, executive, and judicial rights was implemented in democracies to abolish absolute monarchy and fascism. What I'm concerned about right now is that this underlying thought of white supremacist thinking will become fashionable, and that it's okay again to be misogynistic and racist in organizations. And we can already tell that there has been a bit of a shift since January, even in our own organizations. And there's also the danger that minority groups will be used as scapegoats. So all of these reasons are reasons for me to continue to talk about these topics in public. Then something that you're probably aware of is the change in our population towards more lifestyle expats. I don't want to use the term migrants because it has such a negative connotation in the media. So I prefer to use the term lifestyle expats. We see more international hires, more international transfers, dual career couples, where one person now is also looking for a job in a new market because their partner got a job, for example, in Holland or in Germany or in Switzerland. Then we see more female expats. We see more same-sex couples, patchwork families. And something we have noticed over the last 10 years is a shift in the directions. Now, as opposed to 20 years ago, we have more people moving from India and China into Europe or from the US into Europe. I think the US trend has been accelerated recently as well. Then number 4, maybe you have not heard of the term loneliness epidemic, but it actually is something that I've seen in the media. And as you might know, I work as an executive coach as well. So in general, I feel people are more stressed, more lonely, more anxious than ever, which obviously also results in longer term absences from the workplace. And I also consulted a study that Crown did last year, what drives and deters assignees. And for expats, what they're saying is that loneliness is a major challenge and that 30% of assignees find it difficult to deal with the loneliness. Yet only 15% of HR and mobility managers recognize this as a top issue. So the research by Crown indicates a disconnect between what expats or internationally mobile professionals feel and what HR and mobility managers actually perceive as important. The distance from family and friends is the primary reason for hesitancy in accepting assignments, and that also we underestimate personal struggles and seem to be focusing more on the logistical aspects rather than the emotional and social well-being. And number 5 is the world in polarity. So we see geopolitical conflicts on several fronts, funding issues with the cut that the Trump administration is now performing across international organizations, for example. These funding issues will trigger additional issues for many people. Then most social media are now controlled by oligarchs. So there's also this problem like how we consume the media? Is it still something we even want to consume? What kind of information is correct? Who can we believe? I think it also creates a lot of anxiety around who to trust. Then we will see more. We can already see that, but we will see more immigration delays and cancellations if all the countries become more isolationistic. We already noticed that in the pandemic, then immigration gets delayed, things take longer. It will be harder to also transfer people from one country to another. And then we still also in Europe see currently a recession. We don't really know yet consequences of the tariffs. Will that have further consequences? Will there be a further slowdown of the large economies, China, Germany? So the outlook is rather bleak at the moment. And all of that, should lead us in organizations to think about how can we use our mobility better to fill positions across the world. And we must not forget the 4C model. Global mobility is very often associated with compliance topics. Sometimes we have a debate about cost and budgets and how assignees are costing us a lot of money. But we hardly ever talk about the career or the care aspect of global mobility. So today, my focus here is on the career aspect of global mobility, because I think it was one of the reasons for me to actually start my own company, because I always felt there was a disconnect between what we were doing in global mobility and talent development. And I think these topics should be more integrated with each other. Now, as I mentioned, there is a bit of a problem that has been triggered by the way we are organized in HR. I now say we, even though I don't work actively in HR anymore, but I still identify highly with the HR function. So you all know this Dave Ulrich blueprint, the model where we have HR business partners, centers of excellence, and shared service centers. And we can tell that the HR function is in a crisis. I already see a lot of HR functions rebranding to people and culture, but I'm not sure this will solve the deeper issue. And that is the question, what is HR for? What is HR actually doing? So I think the reason why this crisis was triggered is because here, HR was always promised that it will be freed of admin tasks and either be focused on very specialized tasks in a center of excellence, or become a strategic consultant to the business as an HR business partner. But it seems that promise hasn't worked out the way the original theory thought. And now I think a lot of HR managers feel that they're bogged down with administration, and even very senior HR professionals have a lot more administration to do than they had to do in the past. Technology hasn't helped. And that's why I think there is a crisis also happening in HR. Also, a lot of line managers think they can do it all and that they don't really need the HR function for so many things anymore. So global mobility, on the other hand, is so complex and has been, also thriving in the crisis, in the COVID crisis and the wars that came and the crisis that came after the crisis. So global mobility has maybe got a chance to be seen as supportive and helpful, and that their expertise could be used. For example, your expertise could be used in international recruiting, in hiring people from other countries, which again could help to fill the talent gap. And I think we need to think about the future as something that is based on client experience more, rather than think about organizational silos, to think about the client experience and have the client experience on top of everything we do. This concept is not a concept from HR. This is a general marketing concept. And I think we can also adapt it in our work. And this is why I've been focusing very much on what I call the expat experience. And I'm going to take a quick pause, as Inge said. Inge, is there a question for me yet?
No, Angie, there isn't. But is there a question?
Because if not, I will continue. So the expat experience.
Angie, sorry.
Yes,
sorry
go ahead.
To interrupt. My name is Simon. I'm from Switzerland also.
Hi, Simon.
And hello. Hi. I have just a comment. What I heard lately is that companies are. It's also due to budget constraints that they are not hiring any global mobility experts, because when they skip a role, then they skip the global mobility role, because they have to have an HR role just for payment and then they should skip the role. I have several friends who said, oh, we would need somebody for global mobility.
Yeah.
But also the pain is not big enough. They're not being checked by the authorities, or they don't really realize.
Yeah, I think, but I think that could mean, that at some stage they will need somebody with the global mobility background and expertise, even if they don't call it global mobility. So, like it could mean that maybe they need somebody with that expertise in business development or in another area adjacent, but not necessarily in HR. So that could be good news, even if they don't have the budget right now.
I think they will need someone when
When
it's
the
getting
pain is
late,
higher.
or then when the pain is high.
Yeah. Or when they can't find the right people anymore. Now, I'm not going to talk about the demographic changes and the data behind the issue with the demographic changes and what that will mean for the job market. But I think, especially in Switzerland, it's very obvious that we don't have enough qualified people in the market long term. So we have always here depended on the inbound market to even fill the positions already in the past. So this will just accelerate in the future. I will continue with the expat experience model a little bit, and hopefully then you see where this is going. So now, as we mainly go into let's say one direction now, where we maybe not talk about international assignments and long-term assignments so much anymore, maybe do more short-term assignments, but then, we think about if we want to fill a position that goes beyond, let's say, 18 months, we should probably think about hiring someone on a permanent basis. So in HR, we would then usually ask recruiting to do that. And there would be a recruiter who could also recruit across countries. Most of the time, this is not part of the global mobility scope. So most of the time, this is either done by local HR or recruiting. And the life cycle is a lot simpler than the global mobility life cycle. So basically, we're hiring, then we're onboarding the person, they start to perform, we try to retain them, and then they look for the next role. So it's a very simple process, a very simple value chain. However, I think if we think in experience terms, in expat or international hire experience, we need to change our perspective. We need to change our point of view, as if we would look into a mirror. We need to see things from the shoes of the client. We need to put ourselves into the view of the client. And what really would help you there is to think about an avatar and their story. So I have an avatar called Aisha. One of the things you will notice in the slides, there are some links to documents that you can download. You just have to ask me for access. And there's also the story of Aisha and some other avatars, if you want to have those. And then from the avatar idea, from Aisha's story, Aisha is a person who moves from Mumbai to Paris, or from Mumbai to Amsterdam. You then think about the steps that they take. and what that means. Yeah? So you write down the steps, you think about what is going to happen in step 1, step 2, step 3, what are the pain points, and then from those pain points, you can better support them. And this is what the expat experience is all about. The expat experience model is, sorry? Is everything okay?
Yeah, all microphones are down now. Okay.
So the expat experience model is a bit complex, and I have a whole lecture in the Erasmus master course Inge already mentioned on how to design a sustainable and humane expat experience. But that's why I will not go into detail here. I will just let you know that the 5 elements quickly. Okay, so what is the expat experience? It's more than user experience. It's basically the cultural adjustment process the expats or the international hires go through. Then there's a communication gap that we always notice, that when you've worked in global mobility or even in international HR aspects, you probably notice that we are also recruiters, you probably do the same thing. We're very concerned with the expat. We talk to them a lot until they arrive in the country. Yeah, so we're supporting them through the decision phase, the move phase, the arrival phase. And in the phase where they're supposed to perform, we might offer intercultural training, although in reality that's hardly done. And then for the global mobility manager, the case is usually closed temporarily. But this is the status where the expat and the expat partner most of the time experience the highest emotional turmoil, culture shock, and stress level, and probably ask themselves, why did I come here? And this is, I'm saying communication gap because we leave them alone in the moment where they need us the most. So usually that's after 3 to 6 months. The third element of this model is the personal learning journey. Everyone who's been abroad knows that it's the learning when you go into another culture, when you move from one culture to another, is very high. Sometimes you have to even learn to be alone for the first time. Some people have not been living away from their parents yet. So there's a lot of learning involved. Best example, Switzerland's public transportation system. Every day you need to learn something new. And sometimes it's hard to learn all the time new things. Yeah? So there's a personal learning journey that is part of the expat experience. Then the user experience, the services expats receive at touch points. For example, dealing with the moving company, dealing with the tax advisor, dealing with the immigration consultant and the immigration authorities. There are all these touch points where they work with somebody and they need to go through an experience. This is maybe the easiest thing to measure, the service quality that they receive. But it's only one aspect of the expat experience. And the 5th element is what I call the deeper expat experience, because I think also an expat experience is deeply transformative. You're confronted with things in the host country that you might not like. Maybe you're even confronted with your shadow. Yeah, so that's a concept from deep psychology, from Carl Gustav Jung. Something like, I can tell you Switzerland is very structured, and sometimes it drives me nuts, because I'm not like that. So it's just sometimes hard to be confronted with something that I still had to integrate and learn and be, and feel okay about it. Plan in advance, months ahead, etc. So it's always a deeper transformational experience. And also usually expats cannot really understand that until they reflect that with somebody. Again, a quick pause for questions, comments. Now, what are your 5 focus areas for filling the talent gap? The first one is to align the drivers with expat avatars. The second, to support succession planning through mobility. The third, to train your people in inclusive language and process. Fourth, to understand the new psychological contract. And the fifth is to budget the box of chocolates. So for those of you who have not seen my book yet, this is the Global Mobility Workbook from 2019. We have on top, on the cover, the 4 global mobility drivers. We originally identified those 4 drivers: the market, the sourcing, talent, and lifestyle. They represent different views of mobility. Yeah, so talent and lifestyle are more maybe understood by HR professionals, whereas the market and the sourcing are more important for the business. And what is important is when you think about selection of expats and when you think about expat avatars and expat types and assignees and assignment types, that you align your selection and your drivers with your expat avatars so that you find the right expat avatars for the right driver. One example would be here, this is the 9-box grid that is very often still used in talent development. So this blue lady here is a key talent according to the potential and performance rating. She has the highest in both. The key talent is often the one that we should send on a market-driven assignment to develop a new market, to represent in senior functions. And then we have others here. We have this green person, high performance, but medium potential. Very good for sourcing assignments. And here the yellow one is the high potential with medium performance. Maybe still needs to develop some skills before they can be a higher or excellent performer. They are usually the ones we select for talent programs and for talent assignments. And then here the pink lady is the busy bee. Good performance, good potential, but they never join any programs. Why? Because programs are usually not given to these people. But she would be a great candidate for a direct transfer to another country because she's solid. Yeah. So here's in the worksheet, there's a bit more detail if you want to have a look at that in more detail, and also some stories to look into. To support the succession planning through mobility, it's important before you hire an expat to check the local market. And then if you think about hiring an expat couple, hiring an expat who's married or has a spouse or life partner, to offer a pre-hire assessment for their partner. And then to understand the particular needs of the expat family early on. If you have development programs in place, have clear selection criteria in place for any kind of developmental program. Sometimes there's confusion, and that's often because the selection criteria for the developmental programs aren't clear. Then use data in addition to nomination-based program, because if you only use nomination-based programs, you reinforce the system that is in place, and you don't give the candidates left and right a chance, because everybody loves to nominate their mini-me's. Then if you interview, if you have a short list from outside or inside, doesn't matter, have at least 3 candidates. And then also have representation from diverse talents in your shortlist. Then it is helpful if you use standardized and validated assessment methods that work universally or across the globe, not just in one country. Select high-performing candidates, because if the performance is low, it's not going to get better when they move abroad. So usually the performance level drops. Yeah, so try to select high-performing candidates and assess their intercultural competence. Then train your people in inclusive language and process. Be inclusive already when you develop your guidelines. by having country-level people and culture colleagues, corporate tax, legal, risk, IT security, and other parties give input to your guidelines. Apply gender-inclusive language in all text version of your guidelines and other communications. Develop an inclusive global editing and style guide. Otherwise, you will have endless discussions about cultural differences in style, for example, American English versus British English, etc. And check with your marketing and communication colleagues, because most of the time there is already a style guide available, but maybe you're not aware of it. And then make sure that all job profiles are inclusive and gender neutral. And also, don't just check the gender and how it's written, but also in the role profiles, check for adjectives that are often associated with this male superhero, the Avenger or Captain America role model. Yeah, so things like assertive, dynamic, fast-paced, 24/7. These are often words that, for example, hinder women from applying, or mothers especially, from applying to jobs. So reduce those words that are generally stereotypical for the male superhero. I have a whole list here in this handout that you can look into. Now, number 4, to understand the psychological contract, the new psychological contract. I have read a lot of theory about the business case and also the psychological contract of international assignments, which is basically a lot of things that are unsaid about an international assignment or a new hire from both sides. Yeah, so expectations that are not really written down anywhere. And I think it boils down to something really simple, a simple equation. The perceived benefit of this new job, the opportunity for a better life, free education for the children, the job opportunity itself, the market potential, the financial gain, the experience gain, the opportunities in careers for the spouse, and also the intercultural competence development. All of these perceived benefits have to be higher than the perceived cost. And what is part of the perceived cost? It's not only a financial topic. Yes, we have the cost to company, but there's also the cost to the expat and the cost to the family and the larger family as well. So for example, not having your family support when you're raising your children, or feeling homesick, or missing religious festivals, missing out on family life, or as a spouse, missing out on career opportunities. These are all perceived costs. Yeah, this is all part of the psychological contract. And I think if you understand that better, you can also take it better into account. Then the box of chocolate, number 5, budget the box of chocolate. As we will see more and more international transfers and international hires, I think we need to rethink our whole model. And also, if you don't have a policy yet or a guideline, maybe this is the first step to get started. So to think about a move in terms of a box of chocolates. You budget all of the costs into the box, and then you say to the business, hey, this move will cost you 5,000 francs, or this cost will cost you 10,000 euros. However, we're not going to hire a headhunter because this person is already in our system. They already know our culture. It's going to be a lot easier to hire that person instead of hiring somebody from the external market. And then you focus a bit more on the family system and how you can help them integrate in the host country. And you let the expats decide what they need from your box. Yeah, so the services, for example, do they need spouse career coaching? Do they need tax advice? Do they need immigration support for their non-married spouse? Because many have partners and are not married. And then you tell them a bit what you can offer, and you give them you tell them there's an overall budget, but you manage the budget. And you don't give them a lump sum, because that will only make them unhappy at the end of the day. But you provide certain services that you're convinced will help them integrate faster. And one thing I want to say, to maybe be able to save some cost and make things a bit more effective, instead of providing one-to-one services, for example, you could say, hey, we're organizing a trainee session or a talk with an expert, for example, on pain point like the school system, or the job market, or the health insurance system. Yeah, things that are typically unclear when people move into your country. language schools, whatever. And I'm sure you find providers who happily give free talks to you if you give them like 10 or 15 people that will listen in. Quick break again. Any questions? So otherwise, I would like to continue with the suggestion of a new role, the global mobility coach. Now, as I mentioned, I have this whole lecture, and the lecture boils down to the traditional roles in global mobilities currently don't lead to a lot of happy faces. Yeah, so a lot of at times the experts are not really happy. The global mobility manager is overwhelmed, under-resourced. They often feel like they can't do a good job for everybody because they have too much work. And the host manager is unhappy because then they might have to deal with things like marriage counseling, which they're not equipped to do, or they have to send their secretary to help the expat find an apartment because for some reason there was no policy on temporary accommodation. And that I don't invent these stories. These are real life stories. And in the sustainable and human expat experience model, we have solved these issues by providing human touch and inclusive communication. We also build more sustainable processes and reduce the carbon footprint by adding an additional role to the mix. And that is a global mobility coach. And this global mobility coach would be somebody like me who has a few tasks. First of all, transition support. So they guide the expat through adjustment challenges. That includes cultural adaptation, career transitions, personal development. They help with inclusive leadership coaching. So, for example, if an expat leader isn't used to working in a more collaborative style. Yeah, so for example, somebody from India coming to Germany, and they're used to a very hierarchical style. So the coach will help the expat leader to develop a global mindset, foster adaptability, resilience, and be a bit more effective in their cross-cultural communication, raise the performance level of the team, and also help them become better leaders, more inclusive leaders. Then spouse career support could be a part of the task of the global mobility coach to advise the expat spouses and partners on career continuity, job market navigation, local networking opportunities. Global competency development. There could be support with training skills, understanding how teams work in intercultural collaboration, making the awareness better, improving collaboration across diverse networks. And finally, the emotional and psychological resilience. So they would also support the expats in managing the psychological impact of relocation, culture shock, stress, and also the identity loss or identity shifts that happen, and what I called earlier the deeper expat experience. So with that, we reach an enhanced expat experience with human touch. And we use the support of technology. You will see that little R button here, that's for our RockMe app. We provide our coaching through our ongoing coaching through an app, desktop application called the RockMe app. And the holy grail of technology would be better global mobility technology than what we have right now. So that is still a dream of mine. The holy grail that helps you solve all the problems and rules them all. And then we would achieve accelerated cultural adjustment, higher performance and more inclusive leadership, a more reflected learning journey, a deeper insight into the experience and personal growth for the expats. And also, in addition, with sustainable services, our expat experiences would be enhanced with expat success and long-term retention, and we would have less pain and people stay longer with you and your companies. I'm going to give a few more minutes now for questions before I turn to the last part. Has anything in the chat, Inge?
No, there isn't, Angie.
Is everybody still awake? I can't see the faces. Okay, let me quickly talk about the digital global mobility coaching programs. So what you need to know is when we talk about coaching in general, in the corporate context, not in the private context, but in the corporate context, there's always like a triangle contract. So there's a triangle contract between the coach, the client, and the line manager. Most of the time, the line manager does not get into the detail of the coaching mandate. The line manager might tell their employee, the client, what they expect of them and what they want them to change or work on. But in general, there's a confidential relationship between the coach and the client. But the line manager has an interest, a vested interest basically in this coaching contract. And when we talk about intercultural or global mobility coaching, we have to remember that it's very complex. It's a lot more complex than pure executive coaching or career coaching. And that's because of a term that is called intersectionality. Because in this area where we work, and you probably notice really well, there's a number of things coming together. Yeah, so there's the corporate culture, then there's the country culture, there's the professional culture, and then there's the individual story of the person we have in front of us. And they have all these things that they need to deal with, and they go through a lot of transition. Sometimes they go not only through a cultural transition, but also through a personal transition. So the complexity of that kind of coaching is a lot higher than when we deal with general leadership coaching, for example. This is why I have learned over the years to adopt my coaching style to what the client needs the most. So we have different kinds of coaching. We have goal-oriented coaching, then we have process-oriented coaching, and then we have advice-giving coaching, which is generally not considered coaching, but is often necessary, especially when we talk about, for example, supporting expat partners. There's often a lot of advice giving. And then there's also skill building. For example, when we teach somebody or when we want to support somebody to become a more inclusive leader, sometimes we also need to help them develop the skills. So this is maybe something that you would think is more part of training, but it can also be a part of coaching. And in our digital global mobility coaching at Global People Transitions, we're trying to fill the missing link in the career planning, that we're, especially this career gap that we're now experiencing. We always set 3 goals, 3 coaching goals at the beginning of the collaboration with the client. We have a mid-program and an end-of-program review. And we also co-develop a personal development plan with the global competency model based on the current self-assessment of the client. And we also offer them a transition plan. For example, if they 6 months before the end of an assignment or 6 months before the end of a role, or if they want to think about the next job, they have they can develop their next idea of what the next assignment should be like together with the coach. We have a branding plan. So for personal branding, it's called Brand Essence. They can chat with the global mobility coach. Right now, that's only me, but maybe in the future, we'll have other coaches as well that they can chat with. Right now, they can only chat with me. We maintain the data confidentiality throughout the collaboration, and on the platform, everything is secured, so only the coach can see the individual data of the employees, the clients. We enhance communication and human touch with expats and expat spouses, and we offer weekly practices and reflection exercises. And then we have also, in addition, programs like HM Express and the Global Rockstars. Good news, we're independent of other platforms, and also we continuously improve our content and the design of our platform. But we can basically run it irrespective of what happens in the administration in the US, or who buys Facebook next, provided we have an internet. I mean, that would be an issue if there was no more internet. But then people could come to my home as an emergency backup. And we're now also offering a new program, the HM Express program, as a digital global mobility coaching program only. So before it was always a hybrid program where my coaching was also a part of the cost. That made it a bit more expensive, but now we offer it also as a digital program only, with 12 modules, 24 worksheets, templates and tools, and the RockMe app and my chat support, and a game board with challenges and homework. And every module has videos and text and challenges. And in addition, clients can get extra support, for example, with a weekly 45-minute coaching session with me, in-person meetings, online live support, special features, etc., through the solo artist license. We also have a community. Then we have the Global Rockstar program that is based on my book, The Global Rockstar Album. And this would be for leaders, expat leaders, but any kind of also international leader or someone who leads an international team, a global virtual team, to improve their leadership style, become more inclusive. The next start of the Global Rockstars is on the 5th of May. If you're interested in any of my programs, please contact me directly. I'm happy to talk to you, either as a participant or for your expat population, obviously. And then final words. I think the last few weeks might have been hard for some of you as well. And one of the things that I like to come back to when things get challenging is to think about the circle of influence theory that was created by Kurt Lewin in the 1940s. And what he says is there are certain areas that are in the circle of concern. Yeah. The weather, who is US president, is there a war or not? These are things that are in the circle of concern, but you have no influence unless you're a politician, hardly ever have influence on these topics. But there is an area that is beyond your own control, and that is your area of influence. These are ripple effects. These are the people that you can talk to so that things change. This is your social media, whatever you do, where you can influence others or help others find a job or make life better for others. This is your circle of influence. And I would like to encourage you to continue to work in your circle of influence where you can. So let's resist the backlash. Let's continue our important work. And I look forward to continuing to work on these topics with you. I have also 2 books in the making, the Global Coach Journal, and another book that is probably going to be called Global Mobility Guidelines and Taxation for Internationally Mobile Employees. I've shared a few little secrets already from the book. Currently, it looks like it will be published in 2026. And now I definitely still have 6 minutes for questions and comments. I'm going to stop sharing.
So are there any questions or comments or cases you want to share with Angie? Please do so. And if not, in the meantime, while waiting for them, Next week, we will have another weekly webinar, and this time on the topic of the vacation by John Lee. Alan?
Yes, Angie,
Hello.
thank you very much for a comprehensive presentation. It's covered a lot of areas and it shows how very complex moving people across international borders is becoming. And you've got people you're hiring new to the business, you've got people who are transferring in traditional ways, you've got people you're hiring in one country but actually working remotely for another country. And I think that one of the biggest challenges, and you mentioned the budget, one of the biggest challenges is to treat people equally, because I know from experience that newcomers to the business, even if they're hired from different countries, they will all talk to each other. They'll start comparing notes. They'll start saying what went well and what didn't go well. And the budget is all important to be set from the very outset, that so at least the internal HR teams, line management know what they have to offer. And that makes policy important, although I prefer to have flexibility within policy. But it is a minefield if you don't prepare properly. And one of the most irritating things I've experienced in my global mobility life is HR people saying we can't afford to do the cultural awareness training. It's about 1% of the whole budget, and they're saying no for something which is costing a few $1,000s or pounds or euros. And we have to overcome those things. And I think people are trying to penny pinch. This is a big cost. And just by taking the odd percentage out here and there is not going to make any difference. Well, it's going to make a lot of difference because the individuals and their families are not getting the required support.
Yeah, Alan, I mean, you speak out of my heart, obviously. And I think that's one of the things, where coaching can actually help. Because, one of the reasons why I think intercultural training hasn't been so successful in the past is because it was a one-day event. It happened often very much too early when the expats didn't even have experience yet in the host country, or they couldn't link the experience with something, like couldn't link the training to an experience. Whereas when I work with my clients now, I often work with them for a whole year. And believe me, they have a lot of culturally driven experiences in that year. And then they have 45 minutes where we can reflect on the experience and discuss what is happening here. What is cultural? What is maybe you as a person? What is your story? Like, sometimes things are just because of childhood trauma, have nothing to do with the country, the culture, etc. And then we can dissect these issues, and it helps them so much to progress. And you probably heard this term or heard me say it also many times. People don't know what they don't know. Sometimes we don't know that things are cultural until somebody tells us that this is very typical for the culture. So, I hope you also share my view that, if we have this box of chocolate, we can say, okay, well, it's not going to cost you as a business. It's not going to cost you more than 5 or 10,000 francs. But we make sure that whatever we give to the international hire or the expat is what they actually need. Because that is, I think, also a problem that, for example, we assume they need tax support because tax is complex. But it's not always the case. Sometimes they find a better, cheaper local tax advisor than somebody else. Yeah. But maybe they need immigration support and they need somebody really good because the immigration case is complex, or they have an adopted child, and I think it all boils also down to understanding and having the patience for the person that is in front of you.
Yeah, and that comes back to cost as well. And these costs must be recognized as being vital, not a nice to have.
Yeah. Absolutely. I share your view here, totally.
So a comment from my side, what I experienced a lot is that expectation management is key. Like you said with the coach, I experienced very often that the line manager, promised things out of policy, promised you can bring you can easily go in this area and then work from another area, and then coming to the global mobility, we noticed we are not getting this person into Switzerland because immigration it's not working, or the person cannot work out of Switzerland for the US, for instance, because we can't get a permit because it doesn't make sense for Swiss authorities. So this is then a big challenge and creates a lot of frustration when people were told about certain things, and we are then the bad guys, telling the person, I'm sorry, you can't. So as you has said, just getting us in at the beginning is better, and then as early as possible, making the people aware that maybe what they were promised is not working out.
Yeah, I think, that's my point about the pre-hire assessment. It's such a great tool and it's hardly used. Because line managers often don't understand the complexities, but even some HR professionals don't understand the complexities. Like somebody who's never lived in another country doesn't understand why it's difficult to understand the Swiss health insurance system, for example. And that's why, when you collaborate as a global mobility manager, you collaborate more with your colleagues and they understand more the complexities. It will also help reduce the misinformation, which is happening because of misunderstanding and not understanding the real issues. That's why I'm hoping that if we have this more client experience view and organization and less of the traditional silos, the client will be more in front of what we do. Hope you get what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, Angie, thank you very much. We have to watch the clock because it's past 5.
Yes.
And you're due to another coaching session. Thank you very much for being with us and for enlightening how you perceive the practice and how you can help us and the people we are working for. Thank you very much. Looking forward to having you on the show next time. And to the participants, thank you very much for being with us and wishing you a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.